Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Vanessa O'Connell. I am the editorial events editor for Reuters News Agency, a global news agency of more than 2,600 journalists around the world. It's my pleasure to introduce Maggie Fick, Reuters European Pharma correspondent, and Emer Cooke, director of the European Medicines Agency, for this live stream interview, Reuters NEXT Newsmaker. They'll be able to take audience questions, so please feel free to submit them during Slido. Thank you very much. Over to you, Maggie.
Hello, good morning. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you so much, Emer, for being willing to participate. This is a Reuters Next Newsmaker interview. We are live streaming from YouTube and other platforms, and this interview is being conducted under the Reuters Trust principles. So, Emer, I would like to start with the consensus that Europe's life sciences industry is falling behind the United States and China in research and development and innovation, in investment by industry, in drug approvals, and in access to medicines for its people. And I'll quote from a warning this week from the CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Soriot, who said, quote, "Europe will become a sales office while R&D will take place in the US and China. Then politicians should not complain in 10 years as they do today about the car industry." So tell us, what is your response to this warning, and where are we now? How bad has this situation got?
Yeah, thank you very much, Maggie. It's always nice to start on a positive note.
Apologies, I'm a journalist.
Yeah, you know what? I get a little bit upset about everybody doing Europe down. I think we have a lot of very positive things going on in Europe. Yes, it is a difficult time. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, we have to look at the life cycle industry. Yes, we have to look at the regulatory system, but we're doing it. And not only are we doing it, but we've been doing it for quite a bit of time. So this is not something that we dreamed up overnight. We've got a life science strategy. We've got a new pharma legislation that we're just starting to implement now with a strong focus on innovation and competitiveness. At the European Medicines Agency, we have been trying to anticipate some of the measures in the new pharma legislation to really try to make a difference going forward. Now, yet we're only one part of the pharmaceutical ecosystem, but we're an important part of that. And the industry is an important part, and the payers are an important part, and the patients are an important part as well. So it's all about working together and making this happen. And I think we have the capacity in Europe to do this. But we have to believe in ourselves as well.
We'd really like to hear what you'd say to CEOs who argue that Europe no longer offers an attractive enough return to support launch investment. And we understand that you have been engaging with CEOs recently. Could you tell us, when did you last speak to them, and what did you discuss?
Yeah, so actually just last week we had a really good meeting at the European Medicines Agency. A different type of meeting to what we normally have, where we engage with senior leaders from the pharmaceutical industry. We had 24 companies, trade associations involved. It felt right to talk now because we're just at the stage when we're embarking on setting in place the implementation for the new pharma strategy. We've got the Biotech Act going through the legislative process. We're just at the final stage of the Critical Medicines Act. So there's a lot going on. And we just thought it was an opportunity to really get some constructive ideas about where we in Europe, in the European regulatory system, could play to our strengths. And some of these areas are in the area of data digitalization and artificial intelligence, being ahead of the curve there. The other area is where we can do more in innovation, and maybe just to say a little bit about some of the ideas that we've been working on. In the pharma legislation, we've got this new concept of sandbox designed to improve innovation. We've got the idea of platform approaches that we hadn't got before. So we have a lot of new tools available. But the other thing that we're doing, and it particularly talks to investment in innovation, is we're going to the places where innovation is happening. So we're engaging with the biotech clusters, we're engaging with the technology transfer offices, and we're saying, do you know what it takes to get a product from innovation to market? And can we help connect you with some finance? So these are things that we're also doing in the context of trying to enable innovation going forward.
All right, we'll get to the Critical Medicines Act and drug shortages a bit later, but I wanted to note, we reported last month at Reuters on industry data showing a 35% fall in drug launches in EU markets in the 10 months after the US executive order on international reference pricing last May. And we keep hearing that drug makers are actively reconsidering or at least delaying launches in Europe. And of course, everyone in this room knows that drug pricing is not for the EMA, it's one for the member states. But I'd still like to ask how you view this delayed launches issue. Are low prices in the EU for new drugs putting drug makers off seeking EMA approval in the first place, or do you fear that this could happen going forward?
So I think we're at a very critical point at the moment. Everybody's struggling with what the impacts of the US policies on pricing will be, and that's not just on pricing, it's on where you do your clinical trials, where you market, where you launch. So these are things that are happening outside the regulatory system. I think it's also very important to remember that Europe is the second biggest market for pharmaceuticals. And we have universal health care. So we're in a very strong place in terms of access. Now, do I worry? Yes, of course I worry, because anything that impacts on launch in Europe impacts on access to patients. And that's something that we need, as the overall pharmaceutical ecosystem, we need to take that seriously and to see how we can enable to really make access happen for patients in Europe.
Yeah, just to press a little bit more on that, I wanted to ask, what does it mean to you when European drug makers staffed by European scientists develop breakthrough treatments and they can't benefit the patients right here in Europe?
Yeah, I think we all struggle with, and we heard it in the session this morning, how do we ensure that our patients get access to the best medicines? And the reality is that healthcare budgets are limited. And we need to get a collective approach to this. We need to, personally, I think we need to move to more Europe, because the population of Europe is impressive. But if we always think about access from a national perspective, then we're not getting the benefit of access in Europe. So I think we need to think about more Europe. Working together. I like some of the proposals in the Critical Medicines Act, where we're talking about joint procurement, so bigger markets, which are more attractive then to innovators to market in several countries at the same time, support for strategic projects. There are a lot of good things going on.
Okay, speaking about access, we see the new weight loss pills selling like hotcakes in the United States. When will we see a decision on them here in Europe? A regulatory decision on the weight loss pills, such as Novo's Wegovy pill and Lilly's Orforglipron.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying that we didn't have these products in Europe.
No, of course the GLP-1 injections, but the pills.
Okay, yeah, so very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Could you give any more? Is soon?
Very soon.
By summer?
Oh yes.
Okay, summer's fairly soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to China. So China's biotech industry is breaking records with new global licensing deals. Are they becoming a more viable medicine supplier for Europe? And where could they make the biggest difference in terms of treatment areas?
So, this is something that I'm not sure I have the answer for at the moment. I think it's clear that there's a lot of innovation happening in China. There are a lot of clinical trials happening there as well. But at the moment, we're seeing very little of that coming to the European Medicines Agency. And it's something actually we discussed last week with the leaders, with the pharmaceutical industry leaders, and how we need to be more engaged and make sure that we have a better handle on what's happening and what the impact on the European market will be. Now, I've worked with the Chinese authorities for quite a long time. Really, there's been impressive development in how they assess medicines, how they look at trials, and obviously they've put a lot of emphasis on getting additional investment in China. And I think we need to understand that and see what it means then for the European regulatory system.
Okay, speaking of another regulator, we're curious what's changed in the relationship between the EMA and the FDA since the start of the second Trump administration. Is it harder to talk to them these days?
Well, just to be very clear, we've got over 20 years of really good relations with the US FDA, and that continues. I would say there is not one single day that we do not have a conversation with an FDA colleague. Somebody in my agency doesn't have a conversation with a US colleague or a group of colleagues. Now, there's been a lot of changes in leadership, and that does affect how we do business. I mean, for me, at the far stage of my career, a lot of the people I worked with, and we worked very well, are not there anymore. So it's about finding the new leaders and how we engage with them, and we all want the same thing. We want to have the best products for our respective patients, be it in the pediatric area, be it in the orphan area, be it in the oncology area. So I think there's still a lot that we can do together. Maybe just to mention three things. One, in January, we published AI principles, joint EMA FDA principles, to a common approach to engagement with artificial intelligence. We have a process for parallel scientific advice where a company can make an application to get advice both from EMA and FDA at the same time. And we're seeing an uptick in those advices. So it's not big. I mean, the numbers overall are not big, but we're seeing an uptick in those in the last 2 years. We've just restarted our fellowship program. So maybe you don't all know, but we have an EMA person based in the FDA, and FDA has an FDA person based in EMA. So that's also, that also helps us to navigate the complexities of any changes. But we also have this exchange program with FDA, and this had been put on hold during COVID, and then with successive changes. And we just restarted it again. And we sent a colleague in the veterinary area over to FDA, and we've just sent a colleague in the artificial intelligence area over to FDA as well.
Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning the AI joint guidance, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I just wanted to ask, given the situation in the United States with regards to research and funding these days, do you see an opportunity for Europe to sort of import some strong scientific talent from the United States?
Well, I think we're getting some already, quietly. And I think this is one of the messages that, we are open for business in Europe. We are stable and predictable. We support science. We support independence. We support the regulatory system. And we have seen people come to work with us, or work in the wider regulatory network, ex-FDA people, ex-scientists or scientists who used to work in US institutions, find the European environment very attractive.
Would you be able to put a number on that in terms of the influx, either to your agency or to European institutions?
I have to say it's anecdotal at the moment. I wouldn't be able to put an actual number on it. All I can say is that I'm meeting people who come up to me and say, remember me, I used to work for FDA.
Okay, great. So now switching gears to drug shortages. Europe is again facing critical drug shortages. What is the single biggest failure in the system right now? And just to be a little bit more positive, perhaps you would also like to point to, a concrete shortage that your new powers to monitor shortages have actually prevented or resolved.
Yeah, so let's focus on the positives. So now, since COVID, where we saw unprecedented shortages, particularly in intensive care unit medicines, as China locked down, as we saw the impact of restrictions in India, then big surges in disease in different parts of Europe. This was a time when the European system came together to really try and solve shortages from a solidarity perspective. And I think, and we had no European legal powers to do it at the time, but we saw a need and we saw the benefits, and we worked basically round the clock to ensure that we could manage these shortages as best as possible. We worked with the industry associations, we worked with the different member states. Now, the outcome of that is in 2023, the European Medicines Agency was given new responsibilities for shortages, and we now have a medicines shortage steering group, which is made up of all the member states. I am the co-chair of that with Karl Broik from Germany. And when there is an issue, a critical issue, we convene the steering group to help us solve it. Now, that doesn't mean that a lot doesn't happen behind the scenes. We've also got a system of single points of contact in every company, in every regulatory authority. So they are monitoring what's happening at a national level, feeding it into the European level, and seeing what might need to be done. Now, let me give you some examples of some of the things that have happened positively. So we saw a big shortage of antibiotics in the year 22-23. One of the reasons for that was an underestimation of the demand, the impact of COVID. I mean, there are quite a few things that we were able to understand what caused the problem. Now, we made a concerted effort then the following year to do a proactive analysis of the antibiotic market, and we assessed supply and demand, and were able to reduce the shortages by over 50% in the next winter period. So, and we monitor it every year now. But I think what was impressive was a real challenge one year that we were able to improve by 50% the second year.
And in the first 6 months of a new health emergency, say, are you confident that Europe would have enough vaccines, antibiotics, critical hospital medicines?
In the first 6 months? Well, I think it depends on the emergency. I mean, I'm very proud of how Europe was able to react to the COVID pandemic, but realistically, it was within 10 to 12 months, and that was fast, and that was with an unprecedented, it was with a new disease, it was with unprecedented collaboration, but it really and strong political will across Europe. So we can do it. Now, can we do it in 6 months? It will depend.
And obviously we're living in uncertain times, Emer. Supply chains are increasingly the focus of geopolitical tensions. How concerned are you about medicines becoming a bargaining chip in global trade disputes?
Yeah, no, that's something I haven't really thought about. Yeah. I really hope not.
I guess I'd like to switch gears to ask about vaccine hesitancy. What's been the most successful effort by the EMA so far to convince people that vaccines will indeed benefit them?
Yeah, so just maybe to remind your audience that this is European Immunization Week, so we're doing a lot to promote confidence in vaccination. We work also with the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, based in Stockholm. We have three main areas that we look at. We're looking at how we can influence vaccine uptake, how we can engage with scientific expertise, and how we make sure that we look at new ways of doing things. This week you'll see that we've put out messages on HPV vaccine, on RSV vaccine. We've worked together with the European Centre for Disease Control, as I said. But we're doing a lot of other activities that we're still looking at. We're still trying to see how best, what their impact will be. And one of the measures I'd like to talk about is our podcast. We have launched an Inside EMA podcast, and actually we did a podcast on vaccine hesitancy. We did a podcast on misinformation. These get very, very strong uptake from not only from our normal stakeholders, but also from the younger generation who don't look at our traditional media outlets to find their information. The other thing maybe just to mention is we're doing a lot of work on how to increase trust in institutions and, of course, in the European Medicines Agency and in the medicines and vaccines that we regulate. And we've worked with Edelman, and I know that you have somebody from, in fact, I think Carolyn came to us, who will be talking in this session. So we're trying to navigate a trust future which is different. I'm not sure we've seen the impact of everything yet, but there's a lot going on, and we're open to any ideas that influencers or institutions have. And we've done something. We've also done Vaccines Essential outreach together with pediatricians, again getting very, very good, very good uptake. So we're always looking at new ideas. We're looking at how we reach new generations. We're looking at how we stand strong behind science, independence, and the strength of our medicines and vaccines, and how we can make sure that people believe in us in a different belief society.
And it sounds like you're really trying to reach people where they are. We hear the pharma industry talking a lot about reaching patients and consumers where they are these days, this big trend of the DTC market booming in the United States. And what do you think that direct-to-consumer market will mean for Europe?
Yeah, I think for us, we work very, very closely with patients and consumers, and we learn a huge amount from the patients and consumers involved in our activities. And you heard a bit about this today, about the patient experience data, where we launched a reflection paper on patient experience data and how to use that as part of the evidence package for medicines. I think it's very important that whatever messages we give to patients and consumers, that they're reliable, truthful, and impactful. And I feel that that's a responsibility we need to look at. We need to look at new ways of saying things to make sure that they're heard. And that's something we maybe did less in the past. We were more concerned about the scientific truth as opposed to how that scientific truth is heard by consumers and patients.
Interesting. Do you see a role then for the regulator in kind of looking at, say, the marketing and the way that consumers and patients receive information from these DTC channels?
Well, maybe it's, just to bring it back, because there's any of the direct-to-consumer marketing that is done needs to be in compliance with the what we call the summary of product characteristics of the medicine. So that's something that there's already a responsibility. Regulators already have a responsibility for that, and have worked with companies over the years. So it's something. It's not something that EMA has a responsibility directly for, because this is managed at national level. But every piece of advertising has to comply with certain rules and is monitored at a national level.
Do you get the sense that it's hard for member states to stay, and also the US to stay ahead of that ball in terms of how quickly these telehealth platforms are innovating? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, there's a huge amount going on, and we heard that this morning. And I have to say, we also have to focus. We have to focus on what we can do well, and how we can make a difference. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the telehealth area. There's a lot going on in innovation, in digitalization. We have to be on top of this. But in the end, it's about, for me, as the Executive Director of the European Medicines Agency, it's about making sure that the products that we authorize are safe, high quality, and effective. And then they go from a positive authorization to access to patients in Europe.
Thank you. Before we turn to the audience questions, just one last thing. I was wondering if you could talk to us about that joint guidance with the FDA with regards to AI and drug development and medical devices. What were some of the sort of pitfalls that you feel need to be avoided, that guidance is trying to address when it comes to AI?
So I think this is a very important guidance, mainly because, first of all, the two major regulators in the world have come together and said this is important, and we will work together to decide. We will work together so that there is a common approach. And it's about looking at the opportunities, but also about safeguarding the process and making sure that we have humans in the loop, that we are, that we ensure that we are really working. We know what we're doing, and I think part of that is also about making sure that our regulators are well trained, that they're able to embrace the power of artificial intelligence, but with what I would call a wary eye. So it's, how do you use artificial intelligence to enhance your critical ability, not to diminish your critical ability? So can you use AI to take away some of the work that you'd rather not be doing, but really help you focus on the things that are so critical when you're authorizing a medicine, what really matters, and that's where I think the opportunities are.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, let's see if we can see these questions. They're a bit hard for me to, let's see. Sorry, I'm just gonna stand up, and I'm gonna read the one that has the most votes, if that's okay. You can always say no. 10 years on from the Brexit vote, can you share any thoughts on the impact or damage and what the UK-EU relationship is currently like?
Yeah. I find this a very personal question because, I lived in the UK from 2002 effectively until I came to Amsterdam in 2020. My children were brought up there. They speak with English accents.
It's mine too.
It's been a journey. It's been a journey, and I have to say that you know, we as Europeans, the Europeans in the European Medicines Agency, were heartbroken with the Brexit vote. And the UK was a very important part of our network. And they left a gap. And I think that's something that we need to realize. Now, going forward, we have a lot of good relations with the UK MHRA, mainly in a multilateral, on a multilateral basis. And but we work closely. We continue to work closely with the UK authorities. I think the future of this relationship still needs to be established, because that's a political future, and I'm talking about the scientific regulatory reality at the moment.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think that's it from us. We really appreciate your time today, Emer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maggie. Well, regulation sets the framework. I would like to mention a couple of reminders before we continue. So the session surveys are live on the app. Please take a moment after each one and use the AI note taker to capture everything in real time until under the AI summary section. Now, what does execution look like after we spoke about the framework and the regulations? Specifically, how do frontier companies translate AI not to be just a tool, but as a commercial intelligence system that compounds over time? This session is kindly sponsored by Exevo in partnership with Microsoft. We had lots of discussions in the past about how to move